The other day here at Wildwood Nature School, we, as the children were arriving first thing in the morning, we saw a bunny just kind of nibbling on some weeds. And the children were very quiet who were there at first. And so we watched it for a while until more children started to arrive that, weren't necessarily aware that the rabbit was there, and got a little loud. The rabbit got scared, scampered off into the forest. We kind of wondered where it went. As we were having our group meeting that same morning, and we were in the middle of reading our story, a robin came very close to our circle where we were sitting. And so we all stopped to observe it as it kind of poked its beak into the dirt at regular intervals, probably hunting for some worms or some bugs. Later that same day, as the children were playing, somebody noticed a moth just kind of resting on top of a blade of grass. Then, after our snack, we headed into the forest. And as often happens, the teacher at the front of the line signaled to us that she had spotted wildlife on the path. And so our process for that is teacher had noticed a slug. She alerts the whole group, and then she says, here's the path we're going to take. Point it out to the person behind you. So she points out the slug to the child right behind her. That child, as they're going past it, says the name of the child behind them, make sure they see where that wildlife is, and it continues so on down the process until our whole line gets past the slug. When we got to our clearing in the forest, we noticed 2 more slugs waiting for us and a couple of spiders. We were very excited because this was a particularly high critter count. And so we decided to dub this Critter Day. And as I watched how excited the children were, I started to just put a note in my head to think about, why is this important? What are children getting out of these wild animal encounters? Hello, I am Nicole Travillas-Fravel, and this is Wildwood Teaching. And today I want to reflect a little bit about the benefits of wild animal encounters. Now, I am not thinking necessarily of science or observation skills, and those all can be there. And we have done things where, children are all sitting for 20 minutes, observing a slug, talking about it, taking notes, asking questions that we then use for science investigations. But really, I'm thinking about kind of soft skills, right? The life lessons about who we want to be as people, right? Those executive functioning skills, those social emotional skills that we can learn from animals. Now, there is a lot of research out there on classroom pets and what children can learn from keeping a pet in the classroom, right? Responsibility for taking care of another living creature, empathy for what that other living creature feels, self-regulation, right? We know that pets, when I had fish in the classroom, have that calming effect on children. But really, I don't know the research on wild animals, and especially these like small critters that we are encountering. And so I came up with 4 that I think, in my opinion, 4 things that I think my preschoolers are getting out of their encounters here at Wildwood Nature School with wild animals. And that first one does align with classroom pets, and that is empathy. So when we noticed the moth, and right, every time we notice a critter, the children all kind of crowd around, let me see. And as the children crowded around, they were surprised that the moth didn't move. It didn't try to fly away, which was what we were expecting. We knew it was alive because it was sort of gently fluttering its wings, but we thought, and we talked about it, right? The children asked, why isn't it flying away? We thought maybe it was a little bit injured. And the children wanted to give it time to heal. So they got really large logs and they built kind of a rectangular fence all around the moth to give it time to heal. And this happens often that children create some sort of protective barrier around the small critters, a snail that might be moving slowly. And this is something that they can then transfer to other encounters in their lives with other people who might be feeling sad, right? Or who might need a little bit of protective space, right? Second thing that I think children get out of wild animal encounters, especially the kind that we encounter here, is patience and resilience. So when we saw the slug, one of the slugs that we saw that day, it was climbing up a log that's maybe 1.5, 2 feet in diameter. And the children were surprised. Look, the slug is climbing. We didn't know a slug could climb. Well, it can, right? And it took the slug probably a good 10, 15 minutes of slowly making its way up the log. And so most of the children, they would kind of go and play, and then they would come back, observe the slug, let me know a little bit about its progress. Oh, it's halfway there. It's getting closer. And then they'd go play, and then they'd come back, report on its progress again. One child put his jacket around the base of the log to, again, alert other children to the fact that the slug was there and not to get too close. Until I got the report, it's almost there. It's almost at the top. And so, of course, all of the children start crowding around to see it. And someone bumps the other end of the log. The slug goes tumbling all the way back down to the ground. Luckily, it was not injured, and it resumed its climb. And so here we're looking at the slug, right, and saying, wow, it took it so long to get up to the top. And when it was so close to reaching its goal, it encountered a setback. It fell, but it got itself up. And it tried again because it knew if it got that close that one time, it could make it there. And so this is something that I can use later, right? When a child is struggling with something, I know it is difficult for you to write your name and you only know how to write your first letter right now. But I know, just like that slug, if you keep trying, right, if you get like one letter a day, one letter a week, right, slowly work your way up to it, you're going to accomplish your goal. So we just need to have that patience, that resilience. We need to have the mindset that makes us want to try again. Teamwork is another one, right? Can't always do things all by yourself, right? So we didn't observe this particular day, but every spring we get a robin's nest somewhere, right? We discover the nest, we discover the eggs in the nest, and we get to observe the process from start to finish. We get to observe the parents sitting on the eggs, going back and forth to the eggs, tending to the eggs. We wait expectantly until the eggs hatch, right? And then we observe the hatchlings. And we observe the parents going back and forth feeding their hatchlings, keeping them warm. We watch as maybe one parent tends to the nest while the other parent is perched on a branch close by, watching us, right? Making sure mom and babies are safe. Right? And so we understand that this is something that takes two birds. Right? And so sometimes we need to ask for help. We need to ask our friends or our teachers, and we need to accept the help that they give. And we need to sometimes figure out our jobs within that team, right? One person is doing this. What can I do that still contributes, but I don't need to do the same exact thing? I can be the bird that's standing guard. All right, last thing that I think children can learn from observing wild animals is connectedness, right? I feel like our students here really understand ecosystems in a way that children who are maybe not as exposed to nature understand, right? We know that slug is feeding on those leaves. If we pick a leaf for no reason, we perhaps are depriving the slug of its food. Maybe we are, within our study of what leaves give to plants, maybe we're depriving the plant of food. In the fall, I remember being amazed that I could explain food chains to the preschoolers in a way that they truly understood, right? If we lose one piece of that food chain, right, when an animal goes extinct, right, here's the domino effect, right? Maybe it's not something that we eat directly, but if an animal that we eat eats that particular plant and then that plant disappears, what effect does that have on us further down in the food chain, or even one piece of the food chain? And so again, I feel like there is a corollary to humans, right? To understanding that our actions, despite our intent, right, whatever our immediate intent is, could have an effect on everybody else. So let's say we like to have rough and tumble play with our friends, and we like it, and our friend likes it, right? But we do it too close to somebody else, and we accidentally bump into a friend who isn't into that rough and tumble play and didn't agree with us to play, right? So we need to know that our actions have an effect on everybody else. And if we are going to have rough and tumble play, we need to look at our perimeter. And we either need to alert people around us to what's going on, or we need to regulate what our body is doing because it has an effect on the other members of our group. So someday, maybe I will figure out the research design to this, or I will come across somebody else who has figured this out, how to see if these effects truly are the case. But in the meantime, just keep that in your head. If you are able to expose children to nature and get those serendipitous encounters with wild animals, things that your preschoolers might be learning: empathy, persistence, resilience, the value of teamwork, and how we are all connected to each other in this ecosystem. Thank you for listening to me. I hope that you get a chance to observe these things happening in your preschoolers, and I will see you here next week for another episode of Wildwood Teaching. I will see you there.